Hey everyone, Jamie here. Welcome to Flame Bearers Unedited, a brand new series bringing to you largely unedited conversations. We heard you loud and clear. You want to hear more stories of more elite women athletes from around the world. So we're going to deliver. In Unedited, we're going to bring you completely unfiltered conversations. We hit start, we have our conversation, we hit end. What we're going to see, though, is slightly different because we're not going to have all the traditional bells and whistles that you're used to in Flame Bearers production. So let's jump in.
Hi, Jamie. My name is Caryn Davies. I am a rower, and I am from Ithaca, New York.
Amazing. And Caryn, how did you get into rowing? A lot of people don't see or know about the backstory. So tell us how you got into it.
I was recruited from a very young age. I was about 12 years old and almost 6 foot tall already at 12 years old. I was in the supermarket with my father, and this big, gruff guy came striding up, and he pointed at me and he said, "I want you for rowing." And I thought this was terrifying, so I hid behind my father. But he was the coach at the local rowing club, and he recognized that as a tall woman that I had the potential to be a good rower, and he was right.
Years later, Olympic medals later, he was very right.
Yeah, he's actually in a nursing home now, and I wrote to him recently and just said, "You changed my life. Thank you so much."
So connect the dots for us. I want to get to where you are today. I know, so this man approaches you in the grocery store. You were recruited for rowing. How did you get from there to the Olympics, and what has been your journey since?
The funny thing about just getting into sports, or really anything, is the more you do it, the more you like it. The more you like it, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's this kind of, what do they call it? A virtuous cycle. Yeah, so I got into a virtuous cycle where I found that I was quite good at it, so I did it more. So then I got better at it, so I liked it, so I did it more. And eventually I started to realize that I could maybe do the junior national team. So I trained harder and did that, and that eventually led to rowing in college and then rowing at the Olympic level.
So tell us about Tokyo. I know that you mentioned that a lot of the lessons, some of the hardest lessons and best lessons you've learned has been when things have not worked out. You've obviously had many times things have worked out, but tell us about your time with Tokyo in particular.
Yeah, I should maybe give a little backstory for the people who don't know.
Okay.
I went to 3 Olympic Games: Athens in 2004, Beijing in 2008, London in 2012. My teammates and I were lucky enough to win 3 medals, a silver and 2 golds. I retired after 2012, thinking, all right, I'm done hanging up my oars, gonna become a lawyer. That's that. Well, I found a couple things after retiring. One, it's really hard. Being a normal person is really hard. I know a lot of people think that what we do as athletes is really hard, and sure it is. I mean, that's true, but it is no harder than what everyone does, just getting by, working a job 9 to 5, or in some cases, especially being a lawyer, maybe 7 to 9 or whatever. So I struggled with that, and I thought, I wonder. So actually, I was out rowing. I still row recreationally, and I was out rowing in my single, and this Harvard coach, Charlie Butt, is driving by in a launch, and he turns his megaphone towards me, and he said, "Hey, Caryn, are you training for Tokyo? You should, because you love rowing, and rowing loves you." And that just planted the seed in my head, where I thought, you know what? I'm potentially still young enough and fit enough that I could do this again. And if you have the chance to be the best in the world at something, even if it's for the 4th time, you should probably take it. So I took him up on that, and I started training. And I knew that it was maybe a long shot for me to make the team, because as you get older, You don't recover as well. I wasn't as fast as I was when I was younger. So I thought, if I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this rowing thing for, I guess, the last time, then I need to be sure that this is worth it, whether or not I make the team. I want to get to the end of this year and think, yeah, I'm glad I did that no matter what happens. So I went into that year of training. I thought it was going to be a year. It turned out to be 2 because the Olympics was postponed due to COVID, but that's a whole nother thing. So I figured, I went into that year and I thought a lot about what my goals were going to be. And my first goal was to learn something new. And you might think, well, gosh, I've been rowing for over 20 years at that point. Like, what is there to learn here? But I was going to find something. And the second goal I had was to be the best teammate I could be. And this was partially altruistic, because I really felt like I had something to give back to the sport, and I really wanted to help develop kind of that next generation of athletes. But it was also partly selfish, because I knew that, going back to I'm not as strong as I used to be, I knew that my best chance of making the team was if I could help lift everyone up and just be a real asset to the team as a team player. So I showed up in Princeton, which is where the national team trains. And I knew almost no one. And I felt like, the new kid at school, like, hey guys, how's it going? Can I play with you? Hey. Yeah. And I had this image in my head that I was going to be a mentor and people were going to look up to me, but it didn't really work out that way. I was slow, especially when I first came back. And I was a little bit insecure, because I was like, what am I really bringing to the table here? And so I was shy. I was quiet. I didn't really open up. I was scared of making myself vulnerable. And that didn't work out so well for me. I was not happy training. And when the Olympic Games were postponed because of COVID, and I was staring down the barrel of another year of really hard training and feeling like I was not really part of the team, part of the group, I thought, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if this is worth it, a whole nother year. And I thought, all right, well, I have to do everything I can do to accomplish my goals before I quit. So I reached out to everyone on the team. There were about 30 women training. And I set up a call with everyone, not as a group, everyone separately, one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And one by one, I went through and I asked everyone, what can I do to be a better teammate to you? And that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, because some of the answers were difficult to receive, difficult to hear. I got told that you seem entitled. You think you're going to make this team no matter what. You don't work hard enough. And I realized that my fear of not being accepted and my fear of being vulnerable is actually what caused me to not be accepted, because I wasn't open about how much I was struggling and how tired I was and how afraid I was that I wasn't going to make the team. So because I was so quiet, people thought, oh, you think you're good enough. You think you're not, you don't have to be part of this team to make the team. So I changed the way I was showing up. I let people know how hard this was for me and how much I was struggling. And gradually things started to change. And people started to ask me when they were struggling, they started to ask me, well, you've been through this before, what do you think? like, can you help me? And so finally I was starting to step into that role that I had always seen myself in, that I wanted to be. And things were going great for a few months. And then I got injured. So I hurt my shoulder doing yoga. It was just one of those dumb things where I had tweaked something. And it wasn't getting better. Months went by. I wasn't rowing. I was on the exercise bike trying to stay fit while I do my rehab. And I'd be at the back of the boat bay, just like thrashing myself, just like sweat pouring down my face. I mean, there was no question. People could see how hard I was working, which was great. And I would watch, I'd be back there doing my exercise bike, and I'd watch the rest of the team come in and pick up the boat and walk out into the sunshine. And I felt like I was watching my Olympic dream just recede into the distance as I watched them walk away. And I thought of quitting many times over those few months. And actually it was my partner who said, this is what you signed up for. This is what you wanted. You wanted to learn something, and you're really learning something here. You've never been through this before. I had never not made a team. So I just kept making it clear every day and every way I can that I was there to be part of the team and to help that team do the best it could do in Tokyo, whether or not I was going to make the trip. And I did start running again. My shoulder improved, but by then I had lost too much ground. It was pretty clear that I wasn't going to make the team. And the coach, one day he called me into his office and he said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm not going to give you any more chances. This is the end. I'm cutting you from the team. And I wasn't surprised, but then he said something that did surprise me. He said, a lot of these women who are going to make the team, they don't yet know what it means to be an Olympian. But with your actions the last few months supporting this team, you've shown that you are a true Olympian. So with that, I held back tears as I walked out of his office. And there was a group of women that were going to make the team. They were stretching kind of right outside of the boat bay. And I walked right by them because I knew that if I looked at them and if I said goodbye to anyone, I would cry. And I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't handle that. So I just walked right by. And one of my friends later, she said to me, that day when you walked out, but that wasn't how it ended. Over the next few days, I got text messages from most of the women on the team saying, thank you for rowing with me, for being my friend, my mentor, for helping me get better. I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have gotten through this year without you. And getting those messages, I realized that, I had achieved my goal, even though I didn't make it to the Olympic Games. And even though I wasn't going to be racing and potentially winning another gold medal, I had won something more important than a gold medal, which is the respect and the love of my teammates.
Caryn, I have such goosebumps right now. The way you told that was absolutely beautiful. And to just bear witness to that is an incredible honor. A couple things strike me about that story. Talk to me about internal versus external motivation. The fact that when you decided to come back, you set a goal for yourself that was not based on going to Tokyo. From what you said, yes, you would have loved to make the team, but it also sounded like you wanted to learn something and you wanted to put yourself out there. How do you juggle those two? That's something that so many people, myself included, really struggle with.
I actually want to take you back to my early days of rowing. You asked me how I got into it and how I got good at it. And now when I look back on it with the benefit of many years, more years than I care to admit, And I think about why did I get really into it? And if I'm really honest with myself, it's because I wanted to belong. I wanted friends. I wanted somewhere where I felt like I was good enough. And I found that in rowing because I was good at it and people wanted me around. At the time I thought, well, I want to go to the Olympic Games and I want to win this race and whatever. But looking back on it, I really just wanted a place to belong. And that's interesting. I mean, that's actually kind of straddling that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, because it's intrinsic in that you get something out of it that doesn't depend on success, right? Although success helps because, like I said, I was good at it and people wanted to be around, right? But it is extrinsic in that it does depend on other people. I think it's more intrinsic, and actually, so I've done a little bit of, I studied psychology and learned about self-determination theory, which is basically how intrinsic motivation happens. How are you motivated by these intrinsic, some say internal, but it's not really internal, intrinsic factors. And there are three things. There's community, which is really what I was looking for. There's competence, which is your skills match the challenge. And there's control, which is you have the ability to control what you're doing and how you do it. For me, rowing really meant all three of those. So when I was going back to your original question, is when I was coming back to row in Tokyo, I had learned about all those things, and I knew, okay, if I'm gonna make this a good experience, then I need to make sure that I'm very intentional about getting all those things. And like I said at the beginning, I didn't do so well at it. I didn't create the community. I didn't have control over how people saw me and how I was showing up. And my skills weren't yet, up to the challenge. But by the end of the year, or really 2 years, by the end of 2 years, I was able to make sure that I had all those three things in place.
No wonder you were a psychology major. The amount of self-reflection that is coming through in your answers is unparalleled. It's incredibly impressive. At Harvard, no less. No big deal. One thing that I also heard in your story is wanting to improve and opening yourself up to criticism at a time when that was incredibly challenging and you were making yourself very vulnerable. So what advice would you give for people who are coming up against a challenge like you were, and how to get to that next step? Because what you did was incredibly brave, to open yourself up and to call every single teammate and literally ask for feedback. What advice would you give for people who are in similar positions in their jobs, in their sports?
Feedback it's the biggest gift, and it's so hard. I mentioned that I struggled as a lawyer, and one of the things that I found really hard was it's way easier to take feedback from a coach than from a manager, and I'm not entirely sure why. I've thought about it a lot, and I think it's because everyone knows that a coach is there to help you get better. That is their sole job. And a manager is there to help you get better, but they also have their own agenda, and there's so many other things going on. So I've continually, I still do. I have to think about when I receive feedback, like what is the purpose of this feedback? And there's a couple ways it can go. Like, someone might genuinely want you to get better, however difficult it is to hear. And that was when I was speaking with my teammates. Most of my teammates fell into that category. Like some of the people I respected and liked the most gave me some of the harshest feedback, because they were like, look, I want you to be on this team. I think you have a lot to offer, and here's where you're going wrong. And so I usually had to, take a day to cry about it. But then that gave me something really actionable that really helped me get better. There were a couple other people who gave me feedback that wasn't helpful. I mean, there was one young woman who said, I've known you for 15 years, and in all those 15 years, I have nothing good to say about you. That's not helpful. First of all, that cannot possibly be true. Nobody is all that. And that was just not helpful. And when you receive feedback like that, the best thing you can do is ignore it. Because it's not gonna help you. So, again, I took a day to cry about it, and then I just decided that this feedback and this person was not worth my time. So yeah, whenever you receive feedback, take a step back and look at it from, the perspective of maybe a third person in the room, looking at that feedback happening. And ask yourself, is this useful? Is this helpful? If so, take it on board. Eventually, take some time to process it, take it on board. And if it's not helpful, forget about it. Not worth your time.
Yeah, that's so valuable. I'm a certified yoga instructor, and so much of my practice is about distancing yourself from the self itself. So it's very, very similar. The last thing about that story that I wanted to circle back with was what your coach said to you at the end, how you had taught the other individuals what a true Olympian is. So in your mind, what does it mean to be an Olympian?
So the Olympic Charter has principles, and gosh, now I'm going to forget what they are. Friendship, excellence, respect, and there's a fourth one that I can't currently remember right now. So excellence, that's the one that's kind of the most salient, right? But we also talk about friendship, and we talk about respect. And a true Olympian on the way to achieving excellence honors the other parts of what it means to be an Olympian, and that you respect your competitors and you even befriend them. I mean, that was the whole point of the ancient Olympic Games, is that you put down your weapons and you make friends out of these people who are normally your enemies. And the Olympic Charter also says Olympism seeks to create a way of life based on the joy found in effort. So I've always been very, very conscious of trying to find joy in the effort of trying to get better. It really should be fun, and if it's not fun, why are you doing it?
I love it. Ben and Jerry's used to have a bumper sticker that said that exact thing. If it's not fun, why do it? So catch us up to today. You're now a successful lawyer. Very rarely do athletes talk about their lives after a competition. You mentioned that it is harder to be an employee than it was to be an athlete. Tell us about your daily life now.
Yeah, well, go back to when I was struggling, and back to this self-determination theory, right? Competence, connection, and control. The control part was really missing for me when I was working at a big firm. I was doing long hours. And funny thing is, as an athlete, you work hard, but you also rest hard. You get lots of sleep, and so you can perform at your best. What I struggled with was I was not getting enough sleep, and I knew I wasn't performing at my best because I was tired all the time and grumpy and unhappy. So when I finished, I cut from the team for Tokyo, I had to figure out, all right, how am I going to design a career where I can have things that I know help me be my best? And turns out having my own firm gave me that control where I do great work for my clients, and I'm very clear with them that I have a life and I need to get enough rest, and I'll get that to you in 3 days' time rather than tomorrow. And everyone's okay with that. And I'm very, at this point, I love being a lawyer because really it's about helping people. People call me with problems and I solve their problems.
Last question about that. How what lessons from rowing do you apply to your job today? So I know you've shared publicly how you still apply a lot of the same lessons that you learned from your Olympic journey to your job today. Share some of those.
This one goes back to 2008, training for Beijing. And we had a group of very talented women, a really solid team. We worked really well together. And the last few weeks before the Olympic Games, it wasn't coming together the way that we knew it could. We were not going as fast as we knew we could. And the one day we were out on the water, coach has his stopwatch and he clocks us doing a race piece. And he tells us to go back to the dock, and he meets us in the boat bays, and he says, "All right, guys, you need to figure something out. Like this isn't good enough. This isn't going to win you a gold medal, and you need to figure out how to step it up a level." And we all kind of hung our heads, and people slowly filed out of the boathouse, and I stayed behind for about a half an hour and just thought about what is my role in this? Like what can I bring to this team? And I was the stroke of the boat, which means that I set the rhythm. I'm at the frontal line, back of the boat, setting the rhythm. And I thought, how am I going to, as the stroke, as one of the de facto leaders on this team, how am I going to help us raise our game? And I realized that what I was doing is I was trying to have my best performance. I was working really hard to maximize my effort over the distance that we had to row. And it occurred to me that my job was actually to help everyone else have their best performance. And that might mean that I don't have my best performance. And what I ended up doing was, so a race is 2,000 meters long. And if there's this, sometimes people fly and die. Like you go out too hard and then die a painful lactic acid death, and then everyone passes you by the finish line. But I realized that in an 8, if I fly and die, I have 8 or 7 other people to kind of make up for it in the second half of the race. So if I could just empty my tank in the first half, setting a really good rhythm and helping us get in control of the race, basically that everyone else could take it from there. So that's what I did. And I think I surprised some people in some of our practice pieces. The girl all the way down the bow, Erin Cafaro, afterwards, she was like, "Where did that come from?" But it really energized the boat. And I learned something, which was that my job is not to do my best, it's to help other people do their best. And interestingly, one of the ways I've applied that as a lawyer is people call me and they want to know what their legal remedies are. Maybe, a lot of people ask, should I take this to court? And my answer is usually no. Or sometimes it's, do I need to hire you? And sometimes my answer is no. This is not a problem that is best solved with law. This is a problem that's best solved by having a tough conversation, making an apology, interpersonal skills, and then I kind of coach people through that. So the best days as a lawyer is when I tell people you don't need a lawyer. So it's not about me, it's about them.
What an incredible learning and application of self-awareness in terms of your ability to connect and be a part of a larger group. That's really beautiful. Caryn, anything else that we have not covered that you would like to cover?
People often ask me, how do you deal with nerves? Whether it's, public speaking, people get nervous. I get nervous about that still. Or any performance, especially if it's public. How do you deal with nerves? I got lots of thoughts on that.
Great, let's hear them.
The first one, so this is something I learned from one of the Team USA sports psychologists, Jim Bauman. So I was really struggling, again, back to 2008. This was like earlier in the year. I was really struggling with inconsistent performances. Some days I would win races in the pairs, and other days I would just be so slow that all I could do was go to the shower and cry. And he said to me, don't aim to have your best performance every day. Just aim to beat your average, because that way you will consistently improve. And what that did for me is it took the pressure off. So when I was going into a performance situation, it was just like all that tension was just, I could just let it go, because I was like, I don't have to do anything amazing today.
Right.
I can just do what I know how to do, because it's really about improvement over time, not this one performance. And as you can imagine, when you have a lot less tension, you can perform a lot better. So my performance did improve, right? Not just the kind of slow march that Jane was talking about, but like improved immediately by leaps and bounds. And interestingly, I think our coach was also very aware of this philosophy, because the pre-race speech that he gave us in Beijing went something like this. So this is just another race. You've raced lots of races in the last year. Just go out and do what you always do. I mean, most of them we won, so go out and do what you always do, right?
Win again.
Yeah, right, just win again. But, we're all standing around and we're like, yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, okay, just go out and do what you always do. They were so practiced at this, like, no big deal. And things went well, as we know. We won a gold medal, and afterwards, our coach met us back at the dock. And as we were getting out of the boat, he said, remember what I said to you about this being just another race? Yeah, that was bullshit. This is the bleeping Olympics, and you just won a bleeping gold medal. So sometimes you have to lie to yourself just a little bit in order to have your best performance. Wow. This same coach had another really good strategy going into London.
Okay.
So by the time we got to London, we were undefeated as a team since 2006. Yeah, so there was a lot of pressure. We were far and away the favorites. And going into that race, it kind of felt like, just don't screw it up. Which is, it's great to know that you're capable of winning this thing, but it's also a little bit, it's tough to have those expectations, right? And he would give us this pre-race speech that went like this. All right, when you get to the start line, take a look to your left. Canada. Give a little nod, maybe a smile. Take a look to your right. Romania. Good to see you. Can't wait. Look straight ahead. Take a deep breath and smile. And the thing about that was acknowledging that these people to your left and right are here. Yeah, okay, they're trying to beat you. But if they weren't there would be no point. There would be no race. Nobody would care, right? So think about your competition as collaborators. You all are in this trying to be the best you can be. And that's why people want to see it. They want to see all these different athletes just duking it out, because that's how you are the best you can be. Because if there's nobody there, you wouldn't go nearly as fast. So I was thankful. I'm looking at these women who are going to try to, in a matter of moments, are going to do everything they can to kick my butt. And I was like, thanks for being here. I'm just grateful to be lined up next to you. And
you meant that. You actually felt that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, oftentimes, it's a very small community, so you tend to be, you tend to see the same people over and over again, and you get to be friends with them. And I like to say, never give someone a reason to beat you. Never be rude to someone, right? Because then they're just that much more motivated to beat you. So always be nice.
Sure.
Also, just it's good to be nice in general. Then you make friends. So the thing about gratitude, being grateful that they're there, these friends and competitors that there is, gratitude is very, it doesn't work well with nervousness and fear. Like, one of the quickest ways to get rid of fear is to feel grateful. So getting up to the start line and just being grateful to see my competitors there made me feel a lot less nervous and helped me beat them.
Wow. I've never heard that as a tactic for easing nerves, but I love that.
Thanks for tuning into Flame Bearers Unedited. If you like what you're hearing, please leave us a positive review on your favorite podcasting platform or YouTube. If you want to see more behind the scenes coverage, follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, whatever platform you're on, we're there too. Thanks, and we'll catch you on our next episode.